This is Things I Need to Learn in Life I Didn't Learn in School, covering everything we should know as adults that got glossed over in our classrooms. With your host, Wave News anchor, Dawne Gee.
A big, huge thank you to everyone joining me again. I'm Dawne Gee for Things I Need to Learn in Life I Didn't Learn in School, and there are a lot of things we need to know. We're talking about caregiving today, being a caregiver. I think AARP has told me 1 in 5 people in America are caregivers, and I think most of us may not prepare for that. Charles Williams is here, AARP Executive Counsel, but also a caregiver. Charles, thank you.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
I'm so glad to have you. So, I talk to a lot of friends, a lot of people that I meet up with, and they're caregivers, but they did not plan or expect it. You're a caregiver. Did that happen that way for you?
That's a good question. Normally, we don't know that we're caregivers until we're in the heat of the battle, to put it mildly. The way I came across becoming a caregiver was an uncle and aunt in 1995 approached me. They didn't have any kids, and they basically said, we need someone to take care of us. I didn't know what that meant. I said, sure. So in 2011, everything kicked in. And the things that I had to learn on the spot, making plans, looking at wills, probate, nursing care versus home care versus, there are just so many things, but we'll get into that as we go along.
So were you ready for that?
I was not.
There you go.
Truth be told, I was not.
I think that's what happens with most people. Mm-hmm. Like I'll speak for me, I see my parents, they run around as much as I do. They're healthy right now. They're older, 86 and 82, I think. Mm-hmm. But at some point, I may have to be the caregiver.
Yes.
How do we even start that conversation? When do we start that conversation?
We should start that conversation as early as we can, because there are so many things that can happen in between that first conversation, or things happen at any time. It may not be the result of old age. It may be the result of some unfortunate medical problem or physical problem. Any one of a number of things can cast us into that spiral of having to be a caregiver or of being someone who needs caregiving.
Yeah, because if you're not a caregiver, then you're probably being cared for.
Or you will eventually be cared for, or you know someone who is a caregiver.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so how do we pre-plan? What would you say?
Well, AARP has put together a program called Start the Conversation, or Prepare to Care. And we've identified 5 steps, and I'll just go over them very briefly, and then we can get into that a little bit more. But those 5 steps include: start the conversation, form a team, make a plan, find support, and then take action. So, let's get into it. Start the conversation. At some point, you're going to see some kind of behavior. There's going to be something that's changing, especially as we're talking about seniors as they get older. You're going to see little minor changes that are taking place. That may be the time to start the conversation, not only with them, but with friends, family, loved ones, brothers, sisters, whoever is in the loop. The conversation is, should grandpa, grandma, should my loved one be still driving? Should they, do they need help with medicines? How is their behavior around the home? One of the things I saw with my uncle, for example, was when I go to visit him, I noticed that there would be a pot on the stove with water that has boiled out in a little low flame, gas-fired stove, low flame where the pot was still ablaze. Every time I went home also, I saw that there were a few more dents or dings on his vehicle. So those were like real red flags for me. Sitting in a car with him, because I wanted to understand his behavior while driving. Sitting in the car with him one day, he was driving and he slowed down at the most unusual and inopportune times. One time he got midway of an intersection, cars going zip, zip, zip either way, and he's almost come to a complete stop. And my heart is racing. So I know if that's the behavior I see in the little bit of time I'm with him, then that is exacerbated outside of the amount of time that I get to see him and spend time with him. So
Okay. So same thing happened with my grandfather, but when we had the conversation and we talked about, we're probably gonna have to take your keys, Granddad. I'd never seen my granddad cry. He started sobbing. He started yelling about, "You're not a man if you don't have your purse and your keys," and he meant his wallet. Sometimes that's not easy.
I mean, one of my favorite cartoons, as I have done this AARP caregiving thing, is I saw this cartoon. Well, it wasn't a cartoon, it actually was a photograph of a woman who was sitting down with apparently the woman who was her mom. And as she's starting the conversation, the mom is wearing a pair of boxing gloves and she's gripping onto the chair, ready to jump up. That is a classic example of the introduction that one gets engaged in when about to start the conversation. My uncle needed to stop driving. I had mentioned it to him. He almost took my head off. We Americans are so accustomed to driving, the freedom that it gives to us. We need that Declaration of Independence. When my uncle was going through these changes, when I go home, I would take them to their normal physician visits. And after I knew I wasn't going to get through to him, I pulled the doctor off to the side and I told him about the things I had been observing. And I said, honestly, I'm not comfortable with it. I said, in the past, he's been banging into posts and garages and fences and things like that. God forbid he runs into some child who's on the sidewalk. So that conversation had been started with me, didn't go anywhere. I went to the next person who they had faith in, Dr. Harrington, I'll never forget it, who said, Mr. Ballard, after looking at what I've seen with your records, I believe we're going to have to stop you from driving. And the wind in his sails, he just was deflated in that moment.
But it had to be.
It had to.
Is that part of forming a team? Why do I need a team?
Well, you're going to need a team because it's not a one-person decision. Family is family. We have people who are interested, who are either directly or indirectly, who can give you insight. We have people in my family, for example, who are medical professionals, who do this stuff all of the time. We have people who are social workers, and they're in all physical therapists and all kinds of folks who I did not have that expertise, and I needed every bit of information that I could garner from them. And once that team was started, then you go to them and you say, we need to make a plan. What are we going to do with our loved one? How are we going to do it? What is their legal situation? Have they done the legal work? Wills, advance directives, powers of attorneys. Had to do all of that stuff.
That's important. I did a podcast on that.
I just saw it.
Yeah.
Just listen to it.
So important to do, but most of us don't. I didn't do it until I was flat on my back, couldn't move, couldn't take care of myself, and I remember laying in the ICU thinking, you have nothing done, and now it's too late.
Yeah.
Do it before it's too late.
Do it before it's too late. And I'll tell you what, the first time I have renewed my information, my trust, at least 3 or 4 times. The first time was the most difficult time. It was a difficult decision. I'm going here and I'm about to make decisions about not being here anymore.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, when it was all over, when it was all said and done, it was like a weight was lifted off my shoulder.
Felt good, didn't it?
And every time I know it's time to renew it, that weight is a little easier, but still it is a weighted decision, mentally, emotionally, physically, to take that journey down. It's like, I saw the shot putter in a senior's game. And at the end of his training, he was going to his car, and he has this shot put thing that he hangs to a chain, and he swings it around his head, and he tosses it down the field for distance. And at the end of his game, the camera panned at him. It was a beautiful scene. It was a painting almost of him walking to his car. He's dragging, and he's tired, and he's got that little ball on that chain just dragging behind him and bumping across the ground. That's the way it feels, that shot put.
Yeah.
With that individual dragging it behind him is the sensation I get every time I have to do this thing all over again. And I've been through it.
Yeah, but you have to do it. It's important, and when you get it all done, it feels good.
Yes. Yes, I felt good. I went out and treated myself to whatever I did. But it was just a liberating feeling.
Right. All right. So what else do we need to know so that we're prepared? Because I just think we don't think of it.
Yeah, so now we've made our plan, what to do, why are we having this meeting, and in that plan we have to appoint people. We have to give people assignments. Because, and also when you form that team, go back to step number 2, when you form that team, you get everybody involved. You get the person who is probably the most aggravating individual in the family, but they have a viewpoint. And you have to recognize it, not necessarily agree with it, but that's another viewpoint. We all bring our own stuff to the planning session. Every bit of that stuff can be relevant to the ultimate goal.
And that's to take care of the person you love.
That is to take care of the loved one.
When we make a plan, do we include, we certainly include the loved one, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. If the loved one is capable, you're going to ask them. And when you approach the loved one, you don't want to approach the loved one and say, we think you should, or you're going to do it. It is better to give it to them in the form of a question.
What do you want?
Yeah, what
Have
do you
you
want?
thought
What do you
about?
think about this? What do you think about driving? How do you feel about your behavior? How did this happen? When did it happen? Losing keys. When did you?
Sometimes they don't get it though. My grandfather had a gas stove, and I would come in and I would smell gas. This would happen all the time because he left it on.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And he couldn't smell.
Those senses are dulled over the years.
Yeah.
I mean, this body of ours doesn't.
So when it comes to find support, a lot of times people think we have no help. That's not true. I mean, I'm amazed at everything that AARP does, and the fact that they can get help to you that you didn't even know exists. Find support. Let's talk about that.
Well, I'll throw out a website that one can go to, aarp.org/caregiving, or caregiving. Either one. You open that up, and if the thing I like the illustration I like to give, I'm a painter, so I like to paint pictures. The illustration I give is when you open up that page, it's like Dorothy in the Land of Oz, when she came across and she saw the green Emerald City.
Yeah, and you hear the birds singing, and the flowers are beautiful.
Everything opens up and says nurses, professionals administering medicine, everything. And there are articles upon articles with live testimonials. So to let us understand that we're not in this thing alone.
I just did a story about aging and inflation, and I did not know where to go. I am a member of AARP. I got an AARP backpack when I joined. Thank you. But I am a member of AARP, and so that's kind of always the first thing I go to, because you have those that are aging who are on a fixed budget.
Yes.
And they have fixed savings. So this inflation is killing them. But they even had 99 ways to save money, in this inflation. But you can go there. You find the caregivers. You can find local people, right?
Yes, absolutely, yes. It will take you through, for example, we can do the aarp.org/, we can type in Louisville, for example, and we can see what's going on in Louisville.
In Louisville.
KIPTA is an organization right here in Louisville that does respite services for some caregivers. Caregivers need a break from
They do, and we're going to talk about that. Like I have all kind of things that they have given me. You can go to Careversations. It's a free event for family caregivers, and you can look for that. I know one is coming up July 27th, and one is coming up on August 4th, and they'll give you all kind of tips. They also, I know they haven't done it since the pandemic, but they had a luncheon for caregivers, and everybody would just come and be together and share their stories and support each other. And Yeah, it was pretty amazing. Okay, so find support. One way to do that is on the AARP website.
Yes. Another way to do it is our healthcare professionals out there have connections. My aunt, who I am a long-term caregiver for, lives in Virginia. That's home for me. And when I go home, and I had been concerned about getting the telephone calls that she had fallen a couple of times. Wasn't a big fall. She's 97 years old.
But a fall at that age could be fatal.
Can be the be-all and end-all. So on the drive down to Virginia, I was thinking, I've got to do something. And in talking to the ward nurse, the head nurse for the ward where she is in the nursing home, she says, and she looked at me out of the corner of her eyes as if she was a little afraid to suggest this to me. She says, have you thought about hospice? Now, I'm thinking hospice is...
You're thinking end of life, she's finished.
Yeah, that's it. And I said, well, what will they provide? Because when we get information, we're fed information, we don't know what we don't know, so we have to start asking questions. One of the most important things one can do when entering into this business of caregiving is ask questions. You don't know what you don't know. So I asked her to tell me basically what hospice does. She gave me an overview. I said, where do I sign up? Because it doesn't mean end of life.
No.
It simply means that the nursing home where she is not staffed, and that is not their mission, to give her the care that hospice would give her.
And that's what she needs.
And that's what she needed, just a little more care, a little more help.
Well, when we talk about maybe a nurse or a social worker, a home health aide, even a handyman or somebody to fix or put rails up or things like that, where do we even go for that? Do we talk to the doctors? Do we talk to AARP?
That's one of the things that comes up with in that planning session in one of our 5 steps. In the planning session, we'll say, Mom or Dad needs the lawn cut. Someone needs to walk the dog.
Exactly.
Someone needs to administer medicine. Someone needs to provide trips to the medical professional. In that planning session, everybody's getting assignments, and one should always keep a record so that when the question comes up, well, you didn't tell me that. Well, here we are on this date at this time when we had our meeting. You said you would do this. And then you can hold people accountable. But then you also have a backup plan when what has to happen is not happening. At least there are enough other people in the loop who can maybe take up the slack.
This is a hard question. You may not have the answer to it, but I feel like I need to bring it up.
Let's do it.
Okay. So if you bring people into the home, you have social workers, you have aides, you have handymen. If you're not there, if that elderly person is able to be at home by themselves and you're still their caretaker, you come in and make sure everything's okay, you have to get people you can trust.
That was one of the biggest challenges that I had in making a determination to move my uncle and aunt out of their home into assisted living. Now, I didn't understand the levels of care either. Assisted living, nursing home, private care, home care. All of those were options.
That was a whole lot of cares, and I've never thought about that before.
Yeah.
So you have to look at, because it's not just I'm moving you in with me, I'm moving you into a site. There's a whole lot. You just named a whole lot of levels.
There are choices, and I chose assisted living initially for my uncle and aunt, which meant they still had their autonomy. I could go and, or another loved one could go and say, hey, you want to go out for dinner tonight? They don't have to go through a whole bunch of rigmarole, just sign out. We'll be back later. And the administration knows what's going on. Also, in assisted living, usually they have their 3 meals. If there's a need for managed medicine, they do that for you. They have their own room. I use assisted living also because my uncle and aunt were married for 64 years before
They want to be together.
They wanted to be together. So they were in the same room. Now, when I started looking, I started over a year when I started seeing what was going on at home, looking for a place for them to stay. And I'd end up at nursing homes. I'd end up at a lot of places where they said, well, husband and wife, well, they can't stay in the same room. I said, those two are not going to go anywhere where they cannot be in the same room looking at each other all day.
So we have to think of that.
Think of them. That you remember you said,
yes.
Should we include the loved one in the
You
conversation?
must.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Wow. There's just so much. So what if they're at home, or like with my grandfather, he ended up being moved in with my parents, and we had somebody come in. I can remember really just interviewing and questioning those people and looking at them and looking in their eyes and you know what? Because they're going to be in our home caring for my grandfather, which, Lord, let me tell you right there, they should have gotten wings for doing that. But how do you know if you can trust somebody? Do you do a background check? Like, what do you do?
Well, I expect or I have not personally done this, but I expect there are organizations who have vetted individuals.
Okay, so if you go to a good place, you can probably be assured that
resources
person is okay.
are out there who can help you with the vetting process.
Okay.
And as I was about to say with my uncle and aunt, the only reason I chose assisted living was, in my heart, I simply was not comfortable with having to depend on someone who I did not know, even though they were vetted, because to come in and do what they needed to do. Because all I could think of was that first snowy day when they really, really need someone. That caregiver, that person is going to call and say, I'm not going to be there today. The baby is sick. Transportation. A myriad of things could happen on the day when they really need them. In the assisted living facility, that's 24/7 care.
So I just thought of another thing, finances. A lot of times, caregivers, that money comes out of the caregiver's pocket, not the pocket of the person that they're taking care of. How do we plan for that? That literally just came into my mind, and my heart is racing. It could be like having a child in the home again, not as far as calling them a child, but you have expenses that you have to care for that child.
No conversation about caregiving can be complete without talking about money.
Okay.
Let's talk money. Now, I've just talked about assisted living. There are dollars and cents associated with that. An assisted living facility can cost in the arena of $5,000 to $6,000 a month. Now, the way we were able to handle that was by way of Medicaid, not Medicare, Medicaid. After 30 or 60 days, I'm not sure what it is, Medicaid, you have to cut a deal with Medicaid. No matter how much money the people have or what their resources are, they cannot have resources in excess of $2,000 a month. So if, for example, in my uncle's case, he had a check coming in, my aunt had a check coming in, between the two of them, they could not exceed that $2,000. So that money all goes to Medicaid, and Medicaid takes care of all of the expenses, and you're allowed to keep $2,000. Now, the other thing that one can keep when going into these facilities that is not touched and not considered to be a part of the resourcing is life insurance. But if one has a house, that has to be liquidated. If one has cars, it has to be liquidated.
Do you do that with a lawyer? Like, how do you do that?
I did not use an attorney. I winged it.
Oh.
But I did a lot.
So you have to find what's comfortable with you. I know that they have places, like we talk to a place called Elder Serve all the time, and they try to make sure that those resources are done. But that's something to think about.
Yes.
Okay. Something I think that most people don't think about. If you're the caregiver, you cannot pour from an empty cup. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
You cannot pour from an empty cup.
One of the things that's included in our 5 steps is probably the last point and the most important point. Take care of yourself. If you cannot help someone I like that state. I like that. You cannot pour from an empty cup. If you cannot help someone, if you cannot help yourself, and I'm thinking, as we are healthy individuals, and as your audience, healthy individuals, look at what we do every day just to take care of ourselves. We get up, we brush our teeth, we do our showers and baths, and we eat and we cook, and then we take care of our little things, and then we go to work or whatever our day consists of. That's just us, and at the end of the day, we're exhausted. Add to that 24/7 care for that loved one. And when you're at work, you know you're a caregiver. If every time the telephone rings and they say it's for you, you're saying, oh my goodness, is it my loved one? Or if you're spending more time thinking about your loved one than you are about your personal needs, or if you don't take vacations, you schedule everything around your loved one. You're in it. You're in it. And an empty, how's that? An empty.
You cannot
pour from an
you
empty cup.
cannot pour from an empty cup. I am a person that 24/7 works for this community. 24/7. To the point where even when I had my stroke and I wasn't able to walk and I was in rehab, groups were calling me for help. My mother took my phone away.
Yeah.
She said, we're going to do that right now.
That was the right
And
thing
she
to do.
took it. And somebody looked at me and said, you do give. We get that. That's who you are. But there's nothing in your cup right now. Can't pour from an empty cup. You have nothing to give anyone. And it changed my life. I was like, oh my gosh, if I don't take care of me, then I can't take care of anybody.
That's right. You're not super person.
You could say superwoman. It's okay. I know also that AARP has special information for military, if you're like a military caregiver. And again, all of these things we just need to think about. If there were one thing you wanted to share for those who are caregivers, what would it be?
Take care of yourself. Make a plan. And you want one thing.
No, go
Okay.
ahead. You're doing great.
I was just summarizing.
If you end up 10 things, go for it. Summarize.
Those 4 or 5 things that I'm about to name we should consider as one, because one does not exist without
the other.
Yeah, it's like a 4-legged stool. It's not going to stand up on 3 legs. So you're going to need to take care of yourself. You're going to need to plan. You're going to need to look at the financial resources, and you're going to need help. You're going to need help. You can't do this by yourself.
And I'm saying this maybe for me, but I know somebody's got to be in the same boat. I fear one day I'm going to need a caregiver. What should I be doing?
Making plans, having conversations with those who potentially would be your caregiver, and be open, be candid, because the story of life is of a human circle, and I don't want to get all philosophical and mushy about that. I love talking about that stuff. But life is a continuation, and we know that the definition of birth is that one day we will die. And in that journey to get to that goal, there are stops along the way. Some have a smooth journey. Some have stops along the way that create physical challenges, mental challenges, emotional challenges. All of those encompass this journey. And it's like connecting the dots. And if you miss any one of those points, it can be catastrophic. So we should not hide our heads in the sands and say, oh, I'm healthy today. That bus might swing through and hit you today. If you're not prepared, I'm having this discussion right now with my son. Where are you in all of these things? Because he knows my situation, and I've sat him down and we've identified everything. But there is absolutely nothing wrong with saying, guys, we need to talk, and it's about me for you.
I think Americans don't do that.
We don't.
I don't know what it is.
It's just human nature.
We don't do it. But in other cultures, you see it. You even see them celebrating the dead,
Yes.
talking about the dead, planning for their death, and we don't want to talk about it.
Well, we have, in our Western culture, we have a different take on life and death. So it's a cultural thing.
Yes.
And we don't like to talk about things that we don't know much about.
Boy, we'd be so much better
Yeah.
if we just learned, shared, talked about it, stepped into it, and faced it. I thank you. You are just like, I could sit and talk to you all day. You are just a wealth of information. Again, I never want people to go away and not have a place to start working on this, because I'm saying work on it, talk about it, get it done, do it, don't be afraid of it. I guess the first place we would go would be just AARP.org/caregiver. Okay.
And when we go AARP.org/caregiver.
And let me just say, you can go to AARP.org/caregivers, but if you are wondering if for your elderly person, anything, how to prepare the house,
Yes.
how to shop, how to be healthy, you can find
How
it
to
on
save
there.
money.
How to save money.
Discounts.
It's on there.
I'm telling you all, AARP is the bomb.
Yes.
To put it.
All right. I appreciate you so very much, Charles Williams. And again, it's things I need to learn in life I didn't learn in school. We're going to learn together. And if you have an idea of something you think we need to learn, let me know. Again, thank you for always, always listening.